Hi, I'm Jacqueline.
And I'm Courtney, and this is Caffeinated Crimes.
I have a story to tell, but I was trying to think of like anything else to just kind of like ease into the episode. But we've been chatting for like half an hour now, and I've been waiting to tell you the story because I wanted to tell it on the pod.
hmm
And so I was like, okay, come up with something to just kind of ease into it.
Only thing
But
I got is the weather, wondering if the weather is the same everywhere, but that is the most boring conversation starter ever. We did here's our little intro thing of our call to action about message us is I don't know if you saw we had a message on our Instagram
oh, I did
and
not.
it was someone who was saying that they were like binging our episodes
Oh,
and they were
nice.
like, "Oh, like I heard you talk about the Oxford comma," and I had to Google it because we don't have it at all in Australia. And I was like,
Oh,
so different countries might
wow.
not have the Oxford
Interesting.
comma. So now Patreon episode on the Oxford comma?
Oh, I would love nothing more than
Like
to research the Oxford comma.
because I think it's all about a specific writing style, like not writing style, but you
Okay.
know how there's like APA style
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I don't know, my college information's leaving my brain. But I wonder if it has to do with that. So then I'm like, do other countries not have that? So let me know if you're outside the US, if your country has the Oxford comma.
We should do a poll on our Instagram. I don't know how
Like
many
if you
people,
use it or don't use
if
it.
if it exists in your country, and then if it does, if
Yeah.
you use it.
Yeah.
Because I
I
know
think
it
the only
used to
problem
be,
with polls is we're so small that people listen to episodes so much later after 24 hours
that's
that
true.
sometimes it's not as accurate. But I don't know if you can like put a poll up for longer.
I don't know. We'll
I
just,
think you can in the post.
oh, you could do a poll in a post?
I think so in the comments. I think I've
Oh,
seen that.
interesting.
We'll
Okay,
have
I
to
didn't know
look.
that.
But
I do know that the Oxford comma used to be like quote unquote required,
hmm
like correct, I guess. I'm trying to think of the right word to say. Anyway, but then it became optional. So I don't know why the change in like that,
yeah,
like you said, writing style or whatever the right terminology is. I'm sure English majors are yelling at us so
I know.
much
They're
right
like, I
now.
am so sick of you. But like,
Sorry,
is it
guys.
like how like the rest of the world is on the it's metric, right? We don't have the metric. They have the metric. We have the
Correct.
metric. They have okay. How everyone else is on the metric and the US is just like, we're gonna be different. We're gonna
Yep.
call it a mile. Like, is that the Oxford comma? Is that why it's optional?
Oh, I don't know. I guess we'll find out in our
Anyway.
deep dive for Patreon coming in
June
June.
Patreon. Look out for it. Anyway,
I
so
also
that could be our
see,
transition. Well, now you have another
perfect.
story. So,
Well, and now I have two more things to say. But speaking of Patreon, we'll just do our, planning session right here because I keep forgetting about Patreon. So I'm gonna put it in our document so I can like remember to actually, remember that we do those episodes. I really want to do like urban legends that like have truth to them. You know what I mean? Like,
hmm
so one of those just like, a few little short stories of, oh, this is an urban legend, but like here's an actual,
kind of
it has
like
some truth.
the Yeti or the
Yeah.
Snowman, abominable snowman, bomb.
Abominable. Abominable?
Okay, not that one because I won't be able to say it. So stuff like that. That's like this is kind of where it like originated and how it got
Yeah.
to like what it
Yeah.
is.
So
That'd
I
be
think that would
fun.
be fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to my story that I wanted to
The
tell you.
story you had, yes.
Yes. So tonight I learned that my husband's fear of snakes absolutely supersedes his desire to protect his wife and children. So
He left y'all out to dry, didn't he?
he took off. That man deserted us. Me and the dog and both children. And that man was in the road. I mean, he was
He was
gone.
gone. He's like, y'all got
So,
this.
yeah, he's like, nope, not my problem. So we gone for a walk and we came back and like obviously Courtney knows, but like we live like at the bottom of a hill, so you have to like come down, the hill to our driveway. And so I Millie was running around and then I had the dog on the leash and then he handed me the baby because he was gonna fold up the wagon. And then I hear Millie go, "What the heck?" And I like look down and there's the snake like a foot away from her. And I was like, oh God. So of course I like, so then Andrew's like, oh God, what? And I'm sure that's the first thing he imagines because this man is absolutely terrified of snakes. So then he sees it. And it's like, I'm holding the baby. Our 4-year-old is running around. I have the dog and he just takes off running. And
Doesn't
it's
even
in the room.
grab Millie because he's like,
No,
I'm taller. Let me get her
he,
away.
she's literally between him and the snake. That man is
I
gone.
cannot wait to tell her this story when she's older of the time. You know those stories you tell of like your parents, like they're like bad, not bad. It's
No, I
not a
know what you
bad
mean.
moment of parenting, but
Yes,
you're like,
yes.
you just let me out to dry.
Right. Oh, I gave him shit all night for it. But so of course I like with the baby and the dog grab my 4-year-old and I'm like, okay, let's go. And so we, just step back a little bit. Like
Yeah.
I logically know snakes are not going to hurt us. I'm not, but obviously I don't want to be right next to it either. I'm
You
like, I'm
also don't want
gonna
your curious 4-year-old just to like pick it up or touch it and then
exactly.
have to deal with all that.
Exactly. Especially because like she loves looking at snakes like at the zoo and stuff. Like but then of course like Andrew's screaming and running, so then she's crying, so then she's freaking out and she's like, is he gonna eat me? And I was like, no, baby, the snake is not gonna eat you. And then like she has her stuffed animal. She's like, is he gonna eat stuffies? And I was like, no, he's not gonna eat any stuffies. Like everything is fine. And so she's like, why is daddy scared? Daddy's just scared of snakes. Everything is
Yeah.
fine. But I was like,
Oh,
Andrew, and he's like, I'm so sorry. He's like, I literally like something in my brain just shuts off when I see a snake, and there is no thought process. I just run, and I was like, mothers and fathers are so different because like they're. It's
yeah.
never like when I see danger, like my first thought is like grab the children. Like
Yeah.
I just
That is so funny. That reminds me of like we've had like I think we've had 7 wasp nests that we have like
ugh.
had to tackle at
Hmm.
night. And it was one of the first nights. It was the worst. So we got this like new to us grill and it has this grill cover, but the grill cover had a hole in it. So we
Hmm.
see the wasp going in that hole and we're like,
Mm.
well, shit, we don't know where the wasp nest is. We just know it's
Yeah.
in there. So is it right there? Is it like deep down? So like we're trying to do it. Kevin's trying to get like a broom to like get the cover off so that we're not like too close. Like, but there was like at one point, like something happened and I ran back inside and closed the door and he was like, you're locking me out. I was like, I wasn't gonna lock the door, but I don't need the wasps coming in the house.
So you and Andrew are the same people.
Just like close the door because I didn't want them to come in.
Oh God.
Thought you'd be fine.
Like it would be okay.
It'd be fine.
I weighed the risks and
Yeah.
benefits here, and this is what I came up with.
Yeah. I figured you could also open the door and
Oh,
you'd be good.
right. You'd be all right. It was also funny because like it was literally so it was in like the mulch thing, like so like Millie
Hmm.
was on the sidewalk and he was like right up against the mulch. So he's like, a few feet from our house. So Andrew's trying to like shoo him off somewhere to like not come, right up on our porch or, on the deck or anything. And so like Millie and I come inside and the baby, obviously, I forget about obviously I'm holding her, just thinking of who's
Yeah.
inside. So we like go inside and like I'm getting the leash off the dog and taking off shoes and everything. And so like I look outside to see what Andrew's doing, how things are going. This man. In case you do not know, my husband is 6'4". He is standing on his trunk, like peering over because it like went underneath our fence, like onto like our side deck. And so
Yeah.
he's like, I didn't want to like open the gate and him be like right there. So he's like, I was trying to see where he was. And I'm like, first of all, like you were taller than the fence. You could just peek over
Look
the fence.
over.
He's on the ground most likely. I doubt he's scaling the fence. He
Yeah.
could be, but I doubt he is. So he's like standing on his trunk. And I was like, and I went to get a picture, and then of course he got down as soon as I did. I was like, damn it. But
Yeah. That's
yes, so
so funny.
he went off in the little like woods between our house and the house next to us. So, but then Andrew went to take the trash out later and he was legit like looking back and forth like probably 30 seconds before he stepped outside.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of like
So,
Kevin.
yeah.
Kevin was like really, really scared of wasps and like bee
Hmm.
stings, like all that. And then when we were moving, he got stung and he was like, well, it wasn't that bad. Like, obviously, I don't want to get stung again, but it
Yeah.
wasn't like as bad as I remembered it to be. But we were like tackling, like, it was so funny watching him be like, ah, like, I feel like the first few times he was like doing the wasp at night, he like emptied like half the can,
Oh
just being
my
like,
God.
spray, 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 spray.
Spray run, spray
Spray run,
run.
spray run. So, but he's gotten better where he's like more comfortable, but he was like really scared the first go, which I
Yeah.
get. I also didn't,
Yeah.
I didn't want to do it. So I get it. He was like, I don't want to do this. We just like kept finding them. I'm like, these little bitches
Yeah.
Why do you keep, but we haven't seen any, so we think we got them all, but like,
Okay.
dang,
Good. Good.
damn,
Oh gosh.
go
It's
build it
wildlife out
somewhere
here.
else.
Right. Oh gosh. Well, on that note, now that we've chatted about
All sorts of
roundabout
things.
all kinds of things,
Yeah.
um, did you have anything else before we
I
get
do
into
not.
this episode?
Just an update in case anyone cared about my boring story last week. My oven's fixed. I don't have a big story about that.
I think everyone was really waiting for an update on that, so I'm glad we
The
gave it to
whole two
them.
weeks were like, what happened with her oven?
Yeah,
So
they're like, I'm gonna email. They're like, no, I don't want to be weird. I'm not gonna email. I'll just wait. So
everyone actually just skipped through that story. They were like, this shit is boring.
everyone's like, what happened to your oven?
Didn't hear about it.
Oh
Okay, but
gosh.
that's it.
Okay, well, we will get into this episode then. Also, I don't know what my hair is doing. It's anyway. So, our sources for this episode include an episode of People Magazine Investigates, which was season 8, episode 7, The Aloha Murder, an ABC News article, Find a Graves website, an Investigation Discovery article, information from the HonoluluPD.org website, and HawaiiNewsNow.com. So, Nancy Elaine Anderson was born on November 10th, 1952, to Merle and Thelma Anderson. She was the fourth of 10 children. So they had Mike, Carol, Gail, Nancy, Mary, Betty, Jim, Jack, Janet, and Bill. So Nancy was born in Bay City, Michigan. They said she was like the most dynamic of all the siblings, that she just had a spirit of joy and happiness, that she could just make you belly laugh until you cried. She was outgoing and trusting, and she loved to put on plays. Her favorite play was The Wizard of Oz, so each sibling got a role, and of course, Nancy was Dorothy. And in 1966, Merle worked at a chemical company in Midland, Michigan. He was a boiler maker, and unfortunately, the boiler exploded. So Nancy was 13 years old when this happened, and all of the siblings had a rough time. But Nancy did try to like help her family through it and try to find like the fun and joy in spite of them losing their father. So in June of 1970, Nancy graduated from high school. She wasn't really sure what she wanted to do after graduating, and she wanted a change of scenery, so she moved to Honolulu, Hawaii. And this would be the first time that she was on her own, away from her parents and her siblings, and she just wanted to find herself. On October 21st, 1971, Nancy arrived in Oahu and quickly found a job and a place to live in Honolulu. Honolulu. That's the one I mess up. So she found an apartment, like in the newspaper of, someone looking for a roommate. So they lived at 2222 Aloha Drive. And she got a job at the McDonald's in the Ala Moana Shopping Center, which was a little over a mile from where she lived. She was able to take a few weeks off around Christmas and celebrate Christmas with her family. So she brought everyone a gift, and she also put together a picture wall in the family room. So there were pictures of the parents and then all the siblings. So Carol took her to the airport, and then Nancy tells her that she doesn't want to go back. So Carol's like, "Well, you have to go back. Like all of your things are there." But
Yeah,
Carol
she was
now
like, I
wish
was just being like so nonchalant, like your things are there. What are you talking about? Like
exactly
you have
like
to go back.
you
Or like
have to. You don't
not.
have a choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Carol now wishes that she had asked her why she didn't want to go back. But I feel like in that moment, it's just like, oh, I'm having a good time with my family. Like, I don't want to go back. Like, no one's looking for like a more sinister reason in that, you
Yeah.
know?
And I feel like you also have to think this is like the 1970s. Like there are no cell phones. So you are
Hmm.
not checking up on what your like family is doing on Facebook or Instagram or
Yeah.
social media. You can't FaceTime them. I also don't know about phone calls. Like I don't know when long distance because
Yeah.
even I feel like when I was a kid, like if we went to like Myrtle Beach 6 hours away, it was like, is this long distance call back? Like,
Yeah.
so I definitely think Hawaii would be long distance call.
Definitely.
And it's like a huge time difference. Like, so you're probably like, yeah, she's just lonely and missing her family.
Yeah, exactly. So on January 7th, 1972, at around 8 p.m., the siblings are all at home hanging out in the family room with Thelma. So they all heard a loud bang, and Thelma said, Nancy, oh no, Nancy. So Nancy's picture had fallen off the wall and had shattered when Jack and a friend had been playing pool. Jack does say that Thelma did not see which picture had fallen, like when she called out her name. And Mary said they all felt like something had happened. Like it was just kind of this very eerie moment.
Hmm.
So that same day at around 5:15 p.m. in Honolulu, Nancy's roommate, 19-year-old Jody Spooner, made a call to 911. Jody said she heard water running and found Nancy lying on the floor in her room. She was on her back with her head up and her eyes open and her feet pointed towards the doorway. So in that phone call, Jody believed that Nancy had died by suicide. So police showed up around 6 p.m. There were no signs of forced entry. So the Criminal Investigation Unit for Honolulu comes out as well, and Nancy's room had two twin beds, and one of the beds was made and the other was stained with blood. So Nancy was fully clothed, but her blouse was ripped, and there were multiple puncture wounds and just a very, very violent death. Detectives said that at one point they had never seen anything quite so shocking, and it is apparent that this was not a death by suicide and was indeed a murder. So, Honolulu is a big city that experiences crime, but violent murder is very rare. Nancy's case was an outlier. Her injuries were like sharp force, so they were looking for a knife. They didn't find one in the kitchen, and no knives appeared to be missing. And a towel was found on the floor near her body that was stained with blood. And a beach towel was by the front door of the apartment that also appeared to have blood on it. And a third towel was found outside the apartment on the stairwell that also had blood on it. So this can be common with stabbings where the assailant is like cutting themselves. So investigators believe that the assailant had used all of these towels to like try to stop their own bleeding because especially with how violent this was, like you're going to cut yourself and like
Hmm.
there's blood and your hand is slippery, like you're going to slip and cut yourself several times as well.
Yeah.
So Nancy's autopsy showed 63 stab wounds. A knife wound to her heart was the fatal wound, and the weapon used was a small knife, likely a paring knife, which just like makes it that much more horrific of like the extent of her injuries with like such
Yeah.
a
With this
small
like
weapon.
small knife that you're just stabbing like over and over again with.
Yeah. So it is more difficult to kill someone with this type of knife because with it being shorter, it's like harder to hit vital organs. So it's like again just very like traumatic to the
Yeah.
body. It's like nothing is killing you quickly.
Yeah. It's like I mean, hers was due to like a fatal wound to the heart, but it's like
Yeah.
you're just getting these little stabs where you're just bleeding and then feeling every
Hmm.
stab wound versus like immediately getting stabbed in the heart and
Yeah.
like not that
Yeah.
that's like better, but like it's just
Just
more drawn
quicker.
out. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. But investigators do believe that the killer knew Nancy. So on January 8th, which was also the sixth anniversary of losing Merle, Mike had to tell Thelma that Nancy had been murdered the previous day. The police department had no witnesses and no murder weapon, and they didn't really have much to go on. No one in the Anderson family could afford to fly to Hawaii, so they had to rely on the police to do what they can do. So police sat down with the roommate Jody, and she and Nancy weren't really friends. They just kind of had like a relationship of convenience. But Jody described Nancy as friendly and outgoing, and perhaps a little naive, mostly with her interaction with strangers. So not that she was like having a lot of relationship with strangers, but she would just like chat up people on the street frequently. And Jody said it wasn't uncommon for Nancy to have strangers in her apartment. So it's like maybe she was just like a little too trusting, a little too open with people that
Hmm.
she didn't know.
Yeah.
So January 7th was a Friday. Jody said she left the apartment around noon to go shopping and she returned around 2:30. So at that time, Nancy was at the apartment with two men who were cutlery salesmen who were doing an exhibition on knives. So around 3 p.m., Nancy escorted them out. They spoke for a few minutes, and around 3:10 p.m., Jody went to go take a nap. She said she did like maybe hear a scream around 4:15 p.m., but she wasn't sure. So detectives are curious, like how Jody could have not heard what was going on in the apartment. She said she woke up and heard water running. So in their apartment, Nancy had a full bathroom that separated her bedroom from Jody's bedroom. And detectives did their own experiment where one detective went in each room, and the detective in Nancy's room tried to make noise while the water was running in the bathroom. And they did actually conclude that it was possible that Jody would not have heard what was going on based on like the construction of the apartment and the water running. 'Cause I mean, water running can be very loud, especially depending on like the type of faucet and everything.
Yeah, and especially like it's in between. You're also asleep, like you might just like
Yeah.
be a really heavy sleeper and not hear stuff. And I also feel like construction in the 70s was better than these like thin apartments they
Yeah.
throw up now, where it's like
Exactly.
it can be a pretty thick wall. And especially when it's like
Hmm.
if your bed is on the far end, you have your whole room, a whole
Hmm.
bathroom with water running, and then Nancy's room. So it's like
Yeah.
there's quite a bit there.
Hmm. So the cutlery salesmen were identified immediately because they had left a pie cutter behind. So they were Parker Graham and Jeffrey Allward, and they said they had met Nancy on the streets in Waikiki and made an appointment to see her at 1 p.m. in her apartment. Nancy ended up not buying anything, and then the two left around 3 p.m. So Parker and Jeffrey both agreed to polygraph tests and passed. They were eliminated, and they did corroborate Jody's timeline. Jody was eliminated as a suspect as well. They concluded that the time of death was between 3:10 p.m. and 5:15 p.m. So the Anderson family realized that when her picture had fallen and shattered was around the same time that Nancy had been murdered. So very
Very
odd
eerie.
encounter. Yeah.
I feel like also like these two things where it's like Nancy is stabbed to death a few hours because you're like, there was cutlery salesman there. Like,
Yeah.
okay, here we go.
Right.
And then like they had absolutely nothing to do with it. Like the fact that it's such like a red herring. It's like, what? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you mean this has nothing to do with it? And then
Exactly.
like, yeah, like the picture like falling and shattering because it was like they were playing pool and the friend just like knocked the wall with his
Hmm.
like pool stick and it like fell and shattered. So then
Yeah.
it's like, how did these two things happen? Like, it's so eerie.
It is. It is. So, investigators believed that Nancy knew her killer and invited them into her apartment, or it was someone who had access because there were no signs of forced entry. Nancy had told Carol that she had a lot of friends in Honolulu. She said some were guys, but none were like an official boyfriend. And detectives tried to interview anyone who knew Nancy, her friends, coworkers, but they just have no solid leads to go off of. So Nancy was buried next to her dad, and a few weeks after the funeral, Thelma got a call from a man named Mike. So he said he was Nancy's boyfriend and he was so sorry about what happened. So the family's kind of like suspicious and surprised, like, who is this Mike? She had not mentioned him, when she came to visit for Christmas or in any letters or phone calls. Mike said that he was going to the mainland and offered to bring anything back to the family. So Mike did show up to the family home. They said he did seem sincere and very upset about Nancy's death. And Mike asked Mary if she had any leads, and she said, "No, do you?" And he said, "No, but it wasn't me." And they did learn from Honolulu police that he had been interviewed and he was not on Oahu at the time of the murder.
Yeah. So just like another, like, this is kind of suspicious, but
Yeah.
had nothing to do with it.
Hmm.
So Honolulu police got a lot of leads over the next 4 months, but none of them pan out. And after this time, it did soon become a cold case. They said, like, they basically told the family, like, our next hope is a deathbed confession, which they were like, that's not hopeful to hear that it's like, you
Yeah.
know. And Honolulu police did not have a cold case squad. So the family just kept hoping like something would come up, there'd be some information that would come out. And Thelma was very strong in her faith and believed Nancy was with God, which did give her some comfort. So she was like, at least she's not in pain anymore. Like she's with God, she's in a better place. Like that gave her a lot of comfort, especially like on the 6th anniversary of losing your husband. Like, oh,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
so sad. This one is so sad, like every step of the way.
It really is.
So all her siblings were growing up and getting married and having kids. They'd have family reunions and always try to talk about Nancy and just remember Nancy. And in February 2001, which is 29 years after her murder, Thelma passed away at 75 with no answers about what happened to Nancy. And she was buried with Merle and Nancy. And the siblings hated that she, like on Earth, could not know what happened to Nancy and couldn't have like a peaceful death. And they just hoped, like, based on their faith, that now in heaven, like their mom knew what happened. So it's like now that she's in heaven, she knows like everything that happened and can have some answers,
Hmm.
but it's still like you died and didn't know what happened to your daughter.
Yeah.
So in 2001, Carol wrote a long letter to the Honolulu Police Department demanding the case to be reopened. And to her surprise, the chief of police replied and said, "Yeah, we will reopen and reinvestigate that case." So she's like, "Oh, Okay, cool.
Oh, all right then. That's all it takes? Okay, great.
That's all it took. Like, thought I was gonna have to fight somebody, but okay.
Right? Wow.
So, when it was reopened, it was the oldest case being worked by the police department. And there were pieces of evidence still around, specifically the three towels that had been left that they had found throughout like the apartment and apartment complex. And then back in 1972, the only testing was blood type. But now in 2001, they sealed the evidence in hopes to like preserve it because they're like, maybe someday there'll be even a more advanced testing that can be done. Because even in 2001, there wasn't anything like crazy advanced.
Hmm.
But in 2003, they were able to test the blood samples, and it was from an unknown male profile. So now there is a suspect. They just have to identify him. And so in 2003, again, this is like 31 years after her murder, they tracked down every single man who was questioned and like interviewed at the time in Nancy's case. So they tracked down Mike, Parker, and Jeffrey, who were the cutlery salesmen, other men who were interviewed at the time, and they asked them all to provide a DNA sample. Again, this is not like the movies and TV where they get results in 5 minutes. It took a while to find them. They all agreed to give a sample. Some of the testing took 6 to 8 months. So they're like, could any of these men be it? But none of the samples were a match. However, investigators do have CODIS and the Hawaii State DNA Index system. So they're like, someone who committed a murder this cruel would not have only done it once. They're like, he had to have done something else. But there was no match in either system for that as well. So now the case is kind of going back into pending status. But the Anderson family kept having hope and like trying to figure out like what's our next steps? Like what else can we do? And in January 2018, so 10, 11 years later, 15, 15 years later, a lot of years later,
Ooh.
at a family reunion, Jack, again Nancy's sibling, brings up genetic genealogy. So Carol again wrote to the chief of police and asked if there was a way to use this new method. So the Honolulu Police Department had never used this, and their lab was not able to obtain like the detail necessary to utilize genealogy. So like they're like, yeah, it's possible, but like we're this tiny island, this tiny police department. We don't have that much like violent crime like this. Like we don't really have it. Um, and so Jack is like, you know what? We need help. Like the police need help. We got to figure out something to do. So Jack found Cece Moore, who is a genetic genealogist, and Jack wrote to her and said they needed help. So Cece agreed to help the family, and she worked for Parabon, which if you're in the true crime universe, you've probably heard of Parabon with the genetic genealogy. But Parabon works with law enforcement to reverse engineer someone's family tree to help identify suspects. So Cece said it wasn't typical that a family reaches out, so she very soon became emotionally invested in the case. So Parabon could also use the DNA to form a profile of what the person would look like or snapshot phenotyping. And the Honolulu labs also did not have like capability for that either, so that she was like, we can come in and like help with both of these. So in July 2019, the Parabon snapshot came back and it predicted that it was a white man with fair to very fair skin, brown or hazel eyes, and brown or black hair, and that he had European ancestry. And it did help narrow down like who the individual could be. So again, like the picture you get is not spot on. I mean, it can be, but it's not like this is what you're looking for, but it does kind of help narrow it down a good amount,
Yeah.
you know.
Give something to go off of versus before that they
Nothing.
literally had nothing.
Yeah, they're like, it's a male. That's 51% of the population.
Right.
Like, so in the genealogy, Cece could pinpoint two places of origin, which was Romania and two spots in Italy. And according to Cece, this is a very unique mix of ancestry. She also thought in 1972 it was pretty rare that many people were half Romanian and half Italian. And so she found the 1971 Honolulu City Registry directory that had been digitized. So she starts going through it and just looking for surnames that had a Romanian or Italian origin. She's like, I'm just gonna go for it. Um, and she started building family trees for anyone that matched the description. So you can imagine how long this took for
Yeah.
anyone with an Italian or Romanian origin surname.
Hmm.
She said it took forever just to get to the C's, like just through A and B. But in the C's, she found Tudor Shirilla. So Shirilla is a Romanian surname, and when she built his tree, it matched with Romanian on his dad's side and Italian on his mom's side. So they're like, okay, that's lining up. Cece found photos of him, and his traits were also consistent with the snapshot. He was living with his wife, Marley Rocco, about 2.5 miles from Nancy's apartment at the time of her murder. He had a master's degree from the University of Hawaii and was working as a teaching assistant at the time of Nancy's murder. So Tudor had left Honolulu and got a law degree in California in 1977, and in 1980 he was practicing law in Nevada. He had a son and two daughters, and he was a deputy attorney general in Nevada, and he even ran for a seat on the Nevada Supreme Court. So far that's not really what you expect for like a murder suspect to look like. You're like, that's not where we thought this would go. Like,
Are we sure now? Because I feel
I
like
mean, that's true.
at that point,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah, at that point. Um, we're kind of getting to that point too, because just because he had that we know of, well, not saying he did it. Well, anyway, but he had other crimes, okay? So Cece started to dig deeper and she found out he refused to pay his ex-wife child support, and he'd also been arrested for kidnapping his girlfriend who was trying to break up with him. So again, not great. Tudor had also ran the Mustang Ranch in Nevada for a mobster Joe Conforte. So the Mustang Ranch is a sex work establishment that's been around since 1971, and it's still around today because sex work is legal in Nevada. I don't know if anyone else's TikTok had the girl who worked at the Mustang Ranch who would post about it all the time. I I saw her TikToks all the time. But
Nope, that wasn't on my algorithm,
yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah. So Mustang Ranch is still around. It is legal, so it's not, it is legal in Nevada. So, but when it started, it wasn't doing legal things. So, and Tudor was a huge part of that. So, in November 2021, Cece gave her findings to Honolulu police and named 77-year-old Tudor Shirilla as a person of interest. So, police are a little skeptical because they're like, "You got this from a city director?" Like that's a bit much. But they did listen to her and they tried to be like cautiously optimistic. Like they didn't dismiss her outright, but they were like, okay, like we gotta kind of take this with a grain of salt. And so now police are going to try and find any connection with Nancy and Tudor. They appeared to have nothing in common. They didn't seem to mingle in the same social circles. Like there was no indication Nancy was ever going to the University of Hawaii. She was never over there. They weren't the same age. They weren't like the same like marital status. Like he's married with his wife, like she's single. So it's like maybe they met on the street because Nancy would talk to people, but to this day, like we have no known connection between them. So Tudor was living alone in Reno, Nevada, so Honolulu PD can't get a warrant to obtain his DNA just based on Cece's research. So in February 2022, they partner with Reno PD to lawfully collect Tudor's abandoned DNA. As it always seems to be in these cases, it ended up being really difficult because he didn't leave his apartment. It was an apartment, so the trash is in a shared location. You don't know really what you're getting. So weeks and months went by with like very little help, but Cece ended up having another idea. She noticed that there was an estrangement between Tudor and his children. So she thought if they couldn't get Tudor's DNA, maybe they could get his son's DNA. His son was living in Newport Beach. So the Newport Beach PD helped Honolulu PD to contact John Cirilla, which can we just talk about like all these police departments actually working together?
I know, very unheard of. Good for them.
Praise be. So when detectives asked him, he immediately said, "This is about my father, isn't it?" So John had had suspicions about his father's past for a while, and in April 2022, John volunteers his DNA, and that DNA is tested against the DNA from the crime scene, and after 50 years, they finally had a match. John was the biological child of the person who left their DNA behind at Nancy's crime scene. So, 50
Wow.
years later, we have an answer.
And after so much work from the family, like this wasn't even like they had to push to get this to happen and they had to be like, hey, here are all of these things that you can use, and here are
Yeah.
opportunities, and wow.
And to find Cece Moore, who spent so much of her time putting this all together, to have Honolulu PD work with other police departments and not just be like, it was 50 years ago, let it go. Like, actually still cared and like worked on it. Not that I'm ever gonna be like supporting the police, but thank you for doing your job here.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
not that I don't support the police. It's just I'm heavily critical of the police.
Yes.
Don't come for me. I have brain surgery. You can't do that. Anyway, so Nancy's killer was in fact Tudor Cirilla. So with this information, Honolulu PD, nope. With this information, PD on the mainland obtained a warrant to get Tudor's DNA. So on September 6, 2022, law enforcement went to Tudor's apartment in Reno, and they said they were taking his DNA because they were investigating a murder from 1972 in Hawaii. So it does take 2 days between processing the DNA and getting results. So the Anderson family is really concerned about what he's going to do in those 2 days because, like, a lot can happen in 2 days when you probably are being found out for a murder you committed 50 years ago. And on September 8th, he transferred the title to his car to his neighbor and attempted death by suicide by overdosing on Tylenol. However, in the process, he somehow started a fire. So EMTs show up and were able to revive him.
Wow. What a way to attempt to
Yeah.
go.
Kevin was also in the room when I was like doing the research on this, and he was like, Tylenol? You can overdose on Tylenol? I was like, if you take the whole bottle, I think you can overdose on anything.
I feel like you have to take a lot for that to
I
happen.
feel like you just take like 100 Tylenols.
Yeah.
And it must still not be enough because they were able to revive him. He wasn't too far gone, however it was. But this is obviously like behavior of someone who is guilty. Like an innocent person's not doing all this.
Like immediately after, yeah.
Yeah. So on September 14th, it was confirmed through doing DNA, even though we already knew it, but like for sure a match, Tudor was Nancy's murderer. So Tudor was arrested from the hospital and taken to the Reno jail, and Tudor was extradited to Hawaii, and his bond was set at $1 million. So he's gonna have to wait in jail for his trial because I mean he estranged from his kids, he got an ex-wife, he ain't got nobody, he ain't got no money. So he's gonna sit there. And it was taking almost a year to get like the trial prepared. And then on December 25th, 2023, Tudor was taken to a facility for end of life care. And 2 days prior, he had refused to eat, drink, or take medicine, and he was pronounced dead at the hospital. His cause of death was sepsis caused by a urinary tract infection, but there were also other contributing factors, like he had tongue cancer, diabetes, a heart condition, and kidney stones. So he was very sick.
There's a lot going on.
So Carol was very disappointed because she wanted Tudor to have to sit in a courtroom and face Nancy's 9 siblings about what he'd done, like look them in the face and like think about it. But Jack tried to comfort her and said he ended up dying alone and miserable, and they couldn't really ask for much more now that he's gone. He's like, it's been 50 years. He was miserable. He was alone. He's gone, you know. So they were also kind of glad they were spared from the difficulties of a trial because you do have to relive all that. You have to hear all the details, all of that. But it is still really hard that you don't get to see him like found guilty of it.
Yeah, definitely.
So they're still not sure how Nancy and Tudor had any connection. They don't know if like she just met him on the street. They don't know why she let him into the apartment, but we do know that he did kill her. In Nancy's name, the Anderson family and CC Moore are creating an affordable DNA database for law enforcement called DNA Justice. So they want to try and keep it free for law enforcement and help other families like know what happened to their loved ones because they're like if we have these huge databases that can help law enforcement, like more cases can get solved and more families can get answers. And they just want to turn this tragedy into something good. So Jack wrote a book called The Brittle Riddle, based on real life events of Nancy's murder, and all proceeds for his book support DNA justice. So if you want to go buy his book, if you want to read it, all the proceeds go to that. If you want to donate to them directly, you can do that as well. But that is the murder of Nancy Anderson and the solving of, at the time, Hawaii's oldest cold case.
Ugh, what a tragic case. And the fact that even after all that work, like you said, her family still didn't get to feel like they got justice. And they also still just have no idea why. Like,
Why, like
that has to be the
how he got
hardest
in the
part.
apartment, like
Yeah. If they knew
how
each
they
other,
knew each
how
other.
they knew each
Yeah.
other, like to not have any of, to have a small piece of the puzzle, but not to have the big answers, it's just,
Hmm.
that has to be so hard. And then like knowing that they're never going to get them because now he's gone.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I think that's what was like so heartbreaking for me is it's like there's no connections. It's just
Mm-hmm.
this guy out of nowhere that
Yeah.
you never was on a suspect list for this crime ever.
Mm-hmm.
And also never that we know of murdered again.
Mm-hmm.
Like obviously he did other stuff that was like very shitty, but like
Yeah.
for you to stab someone 63 times, like just put your hand up in the air and like try to like hit your hand down 63 times and like think about how violent that is.
Mm-hmm. 'Cause that's the thing, like this isn't just like any murder, like, oh, there was a conflict, someone shot someone with a gun, never murdered again, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
which even that, I feel like if you're able to do something like that, like you've probably done other things in your life. But I feel like that's very different from you stab someone to death with a small knife 63 times and then
And
never went on to commit, like you said, as far as we know, violent acts like that again.
live your life for the next 50 years.
Yeah, 50 years.
Like, did you not have any guilt about that? Like,
I mean, I was gonna say clearly he did at the end, but he probably wasn't even guilty. He probably just didn't want to get caught. So he was
no,
like,
he
I'll
just
just
wanted
go
to
out
be
on my
like,
own
eh,
terms.
I'll just go out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, he's such a fucking coward.
Hmm.
Like, I don't know. It's just so frustrating that you couldn't even tell like the family why.
Yeah.
And then you went and was like, well, I'm not gonna eat and take my medicine, so I can just die. Like,
Hmm.
cowardly piece of shit. But
Exactly. Ugh, what a sad one.
yeah, now that everyone's
And
depressed.
now that we gave you all kinds of stuff to make you sad, we'll try to turn it around a little bit. Courtney, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week is that yesterday was my birthday, and as life goes, you're like, this is what I'm gonna do for my birthday. And then it doesn't happen because it rains. So, but we still rallied. I still had a good day. I did have to work. I didn't take the day off, but we went to Adopo, which is a local pizza place that is just absolutely delicious.
So good.
And it's so good. And then we went to see a movie. So it was fun. It was still a really fun day. It was kind of relaxing. So, um, but nothing crazy, but it was still just super fun. And we celebrated with my family on Sunday. So that was fun. It was very funny because Ashton brought me a gift and, my parents had my gift. And Amelia was so excited for me to like open the gifts. And so like I open them and she's helping me. And I opened the two gifts and she was like, where are the rest of your gifts? Because at like a kid's birthday party, they're opening like 30, 40 gifts. And she was just like, where's the rest? And we're like, well, when you're an adult, you don't get as many presents.
You're like, you actually don't get 30 gifts for every
Yeah.
birthday the rest of your life, unfortunately.
But it was so cute and so funny where she was just like, where are the rest of them?
It's like, that's it? I don't understand. I got like 16 times this. What do you
She was
mean?
like, I had to take a break opening my gifts because I got so many gifts. But yeah, it was funny, but it was a good time. So um
Nice.
just, you know, not much happening when you're 31. So it's not like the big 30. You're just like, whatever. And then just lucky to be alive, I guess. So lucky to
That's
celebrate
something to
another
celebrate for
birthday
sure.
and just, you know, keeping it chill because that's
Yeah.
who I am now. Become an old lady.
You still saw a movie at like 9:30 at night. I don't think that qualifies as old lady, okay?
That's true. It's true.
I don't think I've ever in my life gone to a movie that started after 9 p.m.
Yeah. Okay, that is true. But yeah. I just have to sleep more once I do that. That's the
Yeah.
only problem, but it's fine. We'll work it out. But yeah, so that is my perk of the week. Jacqueline, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week is that this past weekend, our little family went to Chattanooga for a little weekend away. We'd gone back and forth about like where to go on vacation this year, like what we wanted to do, and we're like, yeah, with two young children, we don't really want to travel too far and have to like entertain them in a car for
Yeah.
8, 10, 12 hours, however long it takes. So we're like, we'll just go somewhere that's like less than 2 hours away and just like a short little weekend versus like, a long trip. And it was really, really nice. Everything went smoothly and it like at the end of the weekend until the baby cried for about half of the drive home, which is only a 2-hour drive, so could be worse.
Yeah.
But other than that, like we didn't really have any tears this weekend, like from either child, which is unheard of. I mean, there was a little bit of like whiny, whatever, but like nothing that wasn't like easily resolved and taken care of. Like there were no like
Yeah.
big meltdowns. There were no like, oh, we have to leave this activity because things are getting
Yeah.
crazy. I'm like, oh, maybe this is a good
I'm
age.
just I'm just laughing because I'm like, you're getting this like false sense of security. And so you're gonna be like, we
Yes.
can plan that big trip, and then the next trip, you're gonna plan this like big trip that's gonna be an absolute disaster.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what Andrew and I were saying. We're like, oh, this is like great. We're like, Millie's now old enough to like be able to do lots of things, and like Joey's still young enough to like not be a terror. So I'm like, we just have a
Yeah.
few more months of this, and then we have a few years of chaos again, and then we'll be at
Yeah.
a point where we can do stuff
Yeah.
again. So
Yeah. Chattanooga is
got it in while we can.
a fun town though. I mean, it's like a
Yeah.
nice little small town kind
Yeah,
of
it
feel,
was. It was
but
a really good time. We like did the first day just kind of walked around and, explored like the downtown area. And then we of course had to take her to the Children's Museum, which is amazing and has a bunch of really cool stuff and the aquarium and we went to a place that had pizza and gelato and it was delicious and everything was, it was just a really fun time. So
yeah.
it was nice to have a little weekend away. And of course, Millie kept calling it our new house, and we're like, this is not our new house. We don't live here. So we're like, we're on vacation, and then now she's like, our vacation house, and I'm like, you're gonna go to summer camp and
Oh
talk
my
about your
gosh.
vacation house, and people are gonna be like, oh, you're one of those. And
Oh,
like,
how many homes do you have?
girl, please tell them it was an Airbnb that we rented for 2 nights. Okay. Which I also got so mad because it was like a 3-story townhome. And the laundry room was on the top, and you had to take all of the like any bedding, towels, everything that you use, like to the laundry room. So I'm like, on this last day, lugging up all these
Oh,
sheets, blankets, towels up two
yeah.
flights of stairs, and I'm like, I'm paying way too much money to do this shit. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like this is the line,
I know I'm
okay?
paying like a $200 a night cleaning fee right now. So,
Exactly. Exactly. I'm like, sure. And then the trash you had to take out and the dumpster was like, you know, a whole parking lot away. So I'm like, sure, I'll take out the trash. I'll like compile the dirty stuff, in one section in each room. Okay. Taking it up 2 flights of stairs is
yeah.
ridiculous.
That's why once I started traveling for work and I was staying in hotels, I was like, no, hotels had it
Yeah.
right. Like I can leave all
Yeah.
my trash here. I don't have to make the beds. I can just leave. I don't even have to see the person at the checkout. I can just
Right.
leave.
Just
I don't
walk
have to get
out.
a door code. I don't have to try and like all this stuff. I'm
Am
not
I
gonna get
parked in the
yelled
right
at.
spot? Yeah.
Yeah, like none of that. Like I still do like Airbnbs, especially for like
Yeah.
group trips and stuff like that. Like they're still good.
Yeah.
But if it's like just me and Kevin, I'm like, let's go to a hotel. Especially
Yeah.
because we're going to Nashville on Friday and my Airbnb canceled 2 weeks before. And I'm like, this is freaking
Lovely.
Nashville. I'm not going to find anywhere that
Lovely.
cheap. I booked this in
Yeah.
January because I knew it would be cheap then. Um,
Exactly.
and then Airbnb support gave me a $25 credit that I had to
Oh.
use within 3 days. And I was like, cool.
When they
So I
canceled for
had,
your bachelorette party, I didn't get anything. They were just like, "Oh, sorry."
yeah.
Like there was no like
Yeah,
crazy.
it's so annoying and I had to use it within 3 days. So I just booked another like Airbnb, but I still had to pay
Hmm.
another than $40 on top of
Yeah.
I got a refund for my original, the $25 fee, and then had to pay an additional 40 because you canceled
Hmm.
on me.
Yeah.
Um, but apparently that host got canceled because of unsafe behavior.
Oh,
So
that's interesting. Kind of
yeah,
scary.
yeah. I guess dodged a bullet on that one, but
Yeah, for sure.
yeah. Anyway, not to derail.
Yeah, let us know your thoughts on Airbnbs versus hotels
Yeah.
because where are people kind of landing these days? I'm with you
Yeah.
if like, it's just the two of us, obviously just me, hotel all the way, but like with the kids, it's nice to like have a separate area to like be able to put them to sleep and still like hang out and to like have the kitchen and stuff like that. And like it depends on like the how long you're staying too. If you're there for like a night or two
Hmm.
versus like a week, or like you said, if it's like a big group trip and like everyone gets to like have their own bedroom, but you still have like a common area to hang out, it's
And then we also
complicated.
have to talk about the ethics of Airbnb and how unethical it is
Yes, very
because
true.
it's just rich people buying up housing that now other people cannot
Yep.
afford to make more money. So then it's very unethical once you
Hmm.
get really down and deep.
Yeah.
So
Very true. Very true. Let us know your thoughts.
not to
Let
depress
us
you
know.
guys, but
Right. Let us know your thoughts on this case. You know where to find us. We're in all the places on all the things. It's in the show notes. We're also on YouTube. Um, Leave us nice comments, like we said, because people are kind of mean there sometimes. Um, Rate us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all those places where you can give us 5 stars and say that you love us and that we're wonderful because it makes us very happy. We are
Mhm.
also on patreon.com/caffeinated crimes where we have over 50 bonus episodes. We have pins and stickers, and you can chat with us on Discord. We have some old video episodes. Maybe someday we'll put some more of those up there. Um, you
Maybe.
know, Other stuff. Let us know what you want. We'll try to make
Yeah.
it happen.
We'll do what
I
we
think I
can.
said everything. Whoops.
I think I think that was everything, but it gave me a nice little talking break.
Yeah, I just kept going,
Yeah.
so
You were on a roll, so I just
just let me
kept
have
letting you
it.
go. Just kept letting you be butter.
Yep.
Uh so yeah, but in the meantime, go have a cup of coffee.
And don't commit a crime.